At Bitcoin Magazine, one of our heroes is Hal Finney. Hal Finney was one of the first people to respond when Satoshi Nakamoto submitted the Bitcoin white paper to the cryptography mailing list. He was the first contributor to Bitcoin development besides Satoshi, he was one of the first Bitcoin miners on the network, and he was the recipient of the first ever Bitcoin transaction, which he received from Satoshi. But Hal was a hero even before Bitcoin. Back in the 1990s, he was a major contributor to the popular encryption program PGP. As a cypherpunk, Hal also developed and ran the first ever remailer, a sort of precursor to Tor that anonymously forwarded emails to help people communicate privately. And having promoted the idea of digital cash within techno-utopian extropian circles early on, Hal Finney had in 2004 launched a digital cash project of his own, called RPow. In the summer of 2009, just months after he'd helped Satoshi bootstrap Bitcoin, Hal Finney was diagnosed with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, better known as ALS. ALS is a progressive, fatal neuromuscular disease that slowly kills the motor neurons, which carry signals from the brain to the muscles. In other words, it robs the body from its ability to walk, speak, swallow, or even breathe. ALS can strike anyone, and presently there is no known cause or cure. Hal Finney ultimately passed away on August 28, 2014. In honor of our hero Hal, Bitcoin Magazine is now raising money for the ALS Association. To contribute to our fundraiser or to learn more about Hal, visit bitcoinmagazine.com/r-hero-hal.
Are we live? What would you say?
All right, live. Hey everybody, how's it going? Guys, welcome to Drinks in Quarantine. Today is October 1st. It's the new month. It's been a wild last month. Very happy to have that through, and we didn't exactly start this one with the righteous bang, but we started with the bang for sure. Real quick, I know we were just watching our hero Hal. I wanted to give a quick update. We are putting on this drive for ALS at Bitcoin Magazine. If you go to Bitcoin Magazine /r-hero-hal, you can read all about the efforts that we're doing in order to raise awareness about ALS and kind of raise a little money in Hal's memory. So check it out. Otherwise, welcome to the show. We got a really exciting one today. We have a few OGs, the OGest of the OGs, coming in to share some stories, talk a little bit about the good old days, and talk a little bit about, how things have evolved. And so let's go ahead and do a quick introduction.
And also talk about the outrage that happened earlier today as well with BitMEX. So let's not leave that item off. That needs to be addressed as well.
Oh yeah, we'll definitely get into that first. But before we do, let's do some introductions. David, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, David Bailey, a CEO at BTC Inc., holder of Last Resort, Bitcoiner since 2012.
All right, let's jump over to Junseth.
Hey everybody, this is Junseth, gross as ever. I've been in, I guess, about as long as David. David, I think we go back about as long as one another. A former host of Bitcoin Uncensored, current host of the quasi-deprecated Junseth's World. And I guess it's, what's this called again? Bitcoins and drinking?
Drinks in quarantine.
Drinks in quarantine. So, David, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking Bud Light.
So, okay, a very high class beer. Very high class beer. I can't afford that. I'm drinking Kirkland box wine, which is from the greatest wine fields in California.
I'm just drinking water right now, but I think I'm going to go get a beer soon.
Pussy.
You definitely should, Eric. And why don't you go ahead and give yourself a quick introduction as well, Eric?
Yeah, so hey everyone, I'm Eric Lombrozo. I've been a Bitcoiner since 2011. I don't know, I guess it's hard to say exactly where I am now, like as far like what it is my role is in this whole thing. But Bitcoin, yay!
Eric, you look very thin.
I do. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like in a good way or in a bad way?
Well, like in a good way, I think.
Oh,
Not
okay.
like got cancer from a nuclear facility or something. Way.
Thank you for that compliment, Junseth. That was very sweet of you. You're looking very cancerous today.
Oh, I should make an announcement, by the way, for anyone trying to tweet me, because a lot of people are, trying to talk to me all the time. I'm currently in Twitter jail.
Oh no! What'd you do to get there?
I called a woman a bitch, I think.
That'll land you in jail nowadays.
I do that very often, but for some reason they never get me for it. So I guess.
Well, I don't know what happened. This is the second time in a month. The first one was a 24-hour ban.
Oh yeah. So guys, there's kind of the elephant in the room of today, which is this new move against BitMEX. I don't really even know how to start to handle this topic, so maybe I'll just throw this question to you guys. What do you think of what just happened today? How big a deal do you think this is? Eric, do you want to take it first?
I really haven't been following it, so I don't really know. I just walked in, and so yeah, it's news to me right now too. So
God damn it, Eric! You're really like you didn't save me.
All right, I will take this to the team right here. I do have some thoughts on
things that happened.
What was that, Junseth?
I thought this was going to be a discussion about things that used to happen in Bitcoin.
Right. Well, what happened in BitMEX today is something that used to happen in Bitcoin also. And, I think it's high time that there is a discussion around Bank Secrecy Act and what it exactly is for and means and why we have it in the first place. I got to say.
What exactly happened?
Did they get raided by the CFTC or something like that for not being protective enough of laundering?
So basically, today the CFTC put out a press release announcing the arrest of one of the founders of BitMEX in New York, and then I guess warrants that the FBI has for the other 3 founders that are not in the United States. And BitMEX put out a blog post a little while that sounds like defiant and that they're planning on fighting, but it definitely is the founders of BitMEX are wanted right now by the police. So it doesn't look like that BitMEX is going to be continue to operate long term, but we'll see. I think this is a complicated issue, but the track record I've seen of companies fighting the government in Bitcoin is not good. So we'll see. But it's a fucked up situation because at the end of the day, what's happened is a business that got started by entrepreneurs that really wanted to build something that people wanted and loved, and built a product that was unbelievably successful, were punished because they didn't have the means to comply with the regulatory regime when they were starting the business. And go talk to any Bitcoin company, talk to any Bitcoin exchange, any Bitcoin operator. And one of their biggest costs and one of the most difficult things for them to do in order to be able to launch a business is comply with the Bank Secrecy Act and comply with all of the financial surveillance regulations that we have in place. And so, no one ever takes time to ask, why do we even have this surveillance? Why do we even want that as a thing in our society? But two, a great business that has millions of customers around the world, that's not even an American business, is in danger of being shut down. And I put out a tweet today that.
Are they located in Mexico?
In Hong Kong.
Seychelles, I think, is where they're.
It should have been called Bitcoin.
I mean, they're in all the different banking, that people use to kind of flout the rules, but they got quoted in the indictment as talking about bribing officials in Panama because of how cheap it is. And it's what they're criticizing Arthur for is being too honest and too forthright about how the system works. They were joking about bribing officials because guess what? You can bribe officials. That's how it works. And the fact that they, are saying this because of what it is, and the fact that that's what they're punished for, like they're speaking out loud the truth of the absurdity of the financial regulations that have been put in place to really repress the people. I mean, that's really why it's there. So it's unbelievable that one of the most successful entrepreneurs of the past decade, one of the best Bitcoin entrepreneurs, fantastic people on an individual level.
Well, I would ask this, like, I mean,
entrepreneur in the past decade is being their business is going to be shut down. I mean, that's what's going to happen. And it's like, who does that serve?
Well, sorry, Eric, you go.
The entrenched interests, obviously.
It's not to serve the people that use the VPN to get around the GeoBlock to use BitMEX that are going to benefit. I mean, they're the ones that actually illegally used and accessed the service. And I mean, who from this? And it really, I can only see the beneficiary as the government and the government's ability to keep American citizens and citizens really around the world from being able to use financial tools that they want to use in order to live their life. Like, that's what's happening here. Like they're saying they're not accusing BitMEX of doing anything illegal, immoral, other than just non-compliance with the regulation.
Did you come to Bitcoin thinking this would be easy, David?
I didn't, but it's frustrating to go on Twitter and see people cheering it on or acting like they had it coming.
Well, I mean, but what's so, like, I don't find this story that interesting because, like, the reason Bitcoin was invented is because this is the law. This is what happens in the world of finance. There are these arcane, draconian laws that punish people for doing things that you would think are, reasonable with money. And there's people who are evil out there that do things with money, and governments try to control what they do. And as a result, we all get swept up in sort of the legal infrastructure for holding accountable the lowest common denominator. That's why Bitcoin exists. And even then it's just used as an excuse a lot of the times. A lot of times it's not even about catching criminals. I understand, Eric, but my point is that when you start a centralized company and you are taking inordinate profits, what do you think those profits are from? They're from the inordinate risk you're taking on. So, like, it's insane to me that people are surprised by this.
It's not a surprise as more a sadness that we can all recognize this is happening, and that even when these arcane laws are put in the spotlight and people see what's going on.
But what's the sadness? Bitcoin is the great hope. Like, you know what? I admire a lot of these guys who come before us and have done things that are very high risk. This is my entire sort of point about Charlie Shrem. Charlie Shrem started BitInstant in a world where everybody knew that we needed a BitInstant. And the reason Charlie Shrem started it isn't because he's a smart guy. It's because he was the dumbest guy in the room who decided that he wanted to take on the risk that everybody else knew BitInstant would cause. So he started BitInstant, just like all of these, these exchange operators, and Coinbase and all of these places are trying their best to do compliance. And many of these exchanges are started by people with no experience, who have no idea what compliance looks like, who don't have the financial backing to comply, and who are in the fucking United States. What's wrong with you?
Well, they're not in the United States. They just wanted their people in the States.
Bitcoin is Jesus coming and like being baptized by John the Baptist on the river. Bitcoin is this is the reason Bitcoin exists. We need the on-ramps right now.
So I'm not disagreeing, but no one, where's the time to act on is what the regulation is said to be done? Is that what it does? And it's like, when do we reassess that law, if ever, unless it's just an in perpetuity thing? And so if it was about stopping crime, then people would be going to jail at Wells Fargo and JP Morgan and HSBC and all these financial institutions that literally move trillions of dollars, proven for this cartel. These regulations are not about keeping people from doing crime.
Well, we all know that. I
Happens-
mean, this is obvious. Like, this is not news. I mean, it's very clear, like what the interests are here. I mean, there's
I
people
disagree.
that what?
I disagree, because crime is literally, the definition of crime is to literally violate the regulations. So, like, I mean, these regulations literally are meant.
What I'm asking is a crime against who? And it seems like the crime here, who is against the big banks. It's against the money printers. I mean, they're the only people I can see that benefit from limiting the number of agents in the marketplace and gatekeeping so that only 5 or 6 can be the one. I mean, they get to break all the rules, and they profit breaking all the rules. It's just
built into their bottom line too.
so it's like this is only really a technique to repress the people.
Sure.
One more quick note that I think you'd find interesting is in their long spiel of why they did this and what this means and everything. I think it was the CFTC, maybe it was the FBI. One of the two of them released a blurb saying basically that this is part of their efforts to ensure that the United States, the world leader in blockchain technology and crypto and all that kind of bullshit. And so basically it's like this weird sadistic statement of like, throw this company that technically wasn't in the US out, and so that we can continue to be all important US.
That makes
I put it as a little bit controversial today about I didn't believe in institutional racism until today. But I said that happened.
People?
What?
Now you think they're against Chinese people?
Exactly.
Actually, that makes sense. I like that.
I mean, but truly, like, this is when we talk about like where is there a policy that hurts and represses a group of people beyond their control? Like, these are the types of laws. And in the same way that people are pissed about the war on drugs affecting certain types of people, CX is entrepreneurs, is people who are building products and services that allow all of us to have off ramps out of this monetary system that is a train wreck heading for a massive, massive calamity. And so, like, they want us stuck in their system, and people like Arthur are building the tools that allow us to get out of the system.
Well, David, you can't. The thing is, I think Bitcoiners have this like complete inability to understand why regulation is an important facet of the current system, and why often you kind of want regulation, right? It's not bad because it's regulation. The problem is when regulation comes in, like, is enforced on people who really have no intent of like committing crime.
You mean like BitMEX?
Yeah, but my point is that BitMEX is an on-ramp. How much profit have they made? They've probably made billions of dollars. And my entire point is that the reason they've made billions of dollars is because they're profiting on obfuscation and obscurity of legal precedent. They're going to end up being the case that's brought before the courts to create precedent.
That would only be true if they were the only person doing it. That's not hundreds of companies. They're the best. That's where they are, because they are the best operator. They have the product that went the longest without being hacked. They can their way to the top. That's why they have millions of customers.
It sucks to be the biggest. Yeah. If you're in an environment where we don't know the laws, because the laws literally don't exist, you don't want to be the biggest cow. They're the hog that got fat. Like, that's not that I don't feel bad for them, but I would want people to have empathy if I were arrested for something that was bullshit too. But my point is, like, what do they say? Hogs get slaughtered. Like, if you're the biggest in an environment where we have no precedent for law, you're going to be the one who creates the precedent, and that sucks. But that's just how this shitty system works, and that's why we invented Bitcoin.
We should change the system. All right, Mr. Lombrozo, give us the last word on this. What's your take?
Well, no, I mean, I agree with Junseth. I think that people that take big risks, obviously, like it's uncharted territory, and people are trying to do stuff that was not possible before. Before Bitcoin, if you tried to do this stuff, like, I mean, they would take you down right away. Now people are actually able to build companies for a little while, and they need to make an example out of someone. And so obviously they're going to pick the biggest, most visible case that they can, right? It sucks for the founders. Obviously, I do sympathize. I think that it's horrible that we have to be dealing with this kind of crap. But yeah, I mean, I pretty much it really isn't a surprise that these kinds of companies are being taken down. In fact, I was surprised that these companies were able to operate for so long without being taken down.
And to that, Eric, I think also it, like, the lack of regulation in the space causes a lot of these exchanges to probably act badly by doing things like trading against their users and such, which I think is like, that's been pretty common in a lot of exchanges to like go in and basically front run. So I don't know how BitMEX, like what BitMEX does, but it just, like, the regulation to me seems like something that can be a good thing in preventing like bad behavior from exchanges.
Yeah, except they only apply it to the most successful companies that don't do that and have the best product. They let the ones that do the front running and run the Ponzi's operate with immunity. I mean, I'm not going to name any names, but go look across China, and you can find a lot of Bitfinex, isn't Bitfinex Hong Kong? Didn't they get like a $70,000 slap on the wrist? And I like BitMEX. I'm not trashing BitMEX, but why did BitMEX have to be made these of? And I mean, it's just, we shouldn't be making examples out of entrepreneurs who build great products and services. It's just not right. It's not right.
And yes,
it's not about what's right. I mean, this is not about ethics, right?
Magazine. Say that again.
To Rico Liberty Report, I am drinking goon wine.
I'm gonna get off my soapbox. I'm sorry, but
yeah,
this
so
pisses me off.
So this was a great conversation.
It was a great conversation.
Back
Yeah, it cut off.
forward.
They have bad internet there. Can you tell?
Yeah, David, your internet's really bad.
You need to start using Comcast or something.
Yeah.
Do you think they're in the basement? Like that? Is their OPSEC so good that they can't even have good internet there? Hey Dan, where's
Yeah, what's up, guys?
Being a secret man? There
How
you
guys
are.
doing?
Welcome.
Hey, Dan.
Howdy.
Are we back?
You're back. What's up with your internet, guys?
Yeah,
I know,
so
it's like they got fucking
I don't know.
56K dial-up over there.
We're going through a bit of a bandwidth war with our neighbors. So we're playing around with them, but we have some spotty internet in the near future. But I wanted to take this moment to kind of refocus the conversation on you guys have some of the best perspective on this space, where we've come from, where we're going, that we could possibly look for. And Dan, you're just joining us, so I want to give you a chance real quick to give an introduction.
What's up, Dan?
Welcome, and then we'll kind of kick off our first topic. So Dan, go ahead.
Cool. Thanks for having me, guys. I've been in the space a long time. Got into Bitcoin around 2011, 2012. I thought it was 2012 until I found an old email from my Mt. Gox registration in 2011. So I was like, okay, I've actually been around a little longer than I thought. Moved out to San Francisco early 2013, got involved with the Bitcoin meetup out here. At that time, there's only a dozen people, like Brian and Fred from Coinbase, Jesse Powell, Jared Kenna from Trade Hill, Charlie Lee, really cool, solid group. I didn't know what the hell I was doing back then. I was a finance guy looking to get into tech. And 2013 bubble happened, the first one in March. There was two in 2013. If you've been around a long time, you remember the first one there when it went from $10 to $260 back down to $100. In that moment, I built my first product called Zero Block, which was like the most popular mobile price ticker app at the time, kind of like your Blockfolio equivalent in terms of functionality and popularity. And we got bought by blockchain.com. I was the first product manager at Blockchain. Then I worked at a company called ChangeTip, which did micropayments over social media. Then did a brief stint at Uber, came back to crypto, built a company called Interchange that got acquired by Kraken. And then at Kraken was on business development, and now I'm over on the growth team. So building out the growth team underneath Jeremy Welch, the new head of product at Kraken. So that's me in about 40 seconds.
Yeah, and what a good job. Yeah, 40 seconds right there. That's awesome. Well, guys, so jumping into kind of our first few topics, I wanted to pose a question to you guys, which is, what is your favorite memory from a conference that you've ever been to? Conference that you've been to?
Definitely not Chicago, David. So I think
you guys do all that cocaine.
I think there's two that kind of stand out in my mind that are early ones. I would say the first one is the Inside Bitcoins conference, December in Vegas. There's November, December in Vegas 2013. That was pretty cool. That had a ton of great energy in it. It was right before I was about to sell Zero Block. There was the first Bitcoin Supper Club. So if you're OG, you remember the Supper Club dinners. Supper Club dinners were hosted by Matthew Rojak and Brock Pierce. And so I think the first Supper Club dinner was at that. And that felt super cool. I'd never really been to a conference before. I'd been to a couple before that, but this was like really, it felt really special. That was super fun. Then you had, that same year you had the San Jose May 2013 conference. That was super cool. You had like the Winklevi there, and Brian and Fred were manning the booth. They had printed out a 8.5 by 11 Coinbase sign and taped it to the top of the booth. And so that was pretty funny. And Andreas, there's a famous picture of Andreas where there's a whole empty room that he's talking to for his session. There's only like 5 people who showed up to Andreas's speaking session. So I'd say the San Jose May 2013 conference, Inside Bitcoins, and then the BTC Miami early 14 was pretty wild. Those are probably my 3 most notable ones that I remember from back in the day.
I would probably say the same. The San Jose conference was kind of where I met everyone face to face for the first time, and that's kind of where I met all the other developers in particular. And I was already working on the Bitcoin Core a little bit at the time, but that's when I actually got to see everyone face to face, which was pretty cool. And all the other stuff. I think that I don't know if I met some. Did we meet there, David, or no? I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly. But I think the San Jose
I think we met in 2014.
In Miami, was it?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the Miami conference was pretty cool. I mean, we're very, that was pretty wild. It was kind of a very different vibe. That was when Ethereum was launched, right? Or when the
that was when Vitalik announced Ethereum.
Yeah, right. So they had like that whole house, the party house where they had all the people out and stuff. That was pretty wild. And then what else? I guess there's been obviously Bitcoin 2020 was pretty cool, David. That was a pretty big highlight.
I can't tell if you're trolling me about Bitcoin 2020 or that if you're meaning Bitcoin 2019. But either way, it's funny, all right?
Both. Bitcoin 2020 would have been really cool, but no. I mean, Bitcoin 2019 was obviously like a really cool event, and I think that it sucks that we couldn't do it this year. I was really looking forward to it, and then I think what else? I don't know. I mean, there's been so many conferences at this point. It's like a big blur to me. I don't know. It's been like so many different things that have happened. It's like my memory's like totally like messed up. I need someone to jog it to kind of get everything back.
There was an Amsterdam one. I didn't go to it, but everyone said it was awesome. I didn't go to
that was
the
a cool conference too. That was a very cool conference. Yeah.
And then there was Mo's in 2013. Well, I thought a couple good stories. I've been to a lot of conferences, and when we started the business, 2013, and I was really fresh out of school. So I mean, like, to be honest, my head is pretty screwed up because I only know the reality for my entire adult life that is Bitcoin. And sometimes it surprises me that that's not like the typical reality that people deal with. But there's definitely a relationship in terms of the craziness of the conferences and the parties to the price. And so anytime there's a bubble, any conferences around the peak of the bubble are always absurd.
That's true, because 2014 Miami was right after Mount Gox, and I remember Bitcoin was like 800 at that time. And that went from like nobody was going to go to it to like, hey, we have to rent more rooms.
No, I mean, it was like the Bitcoin 2013 conference was a true nerd conference. It was one of the, I mean, honestly, and Eric, you know this, but the Bitcoin 2019, and thank you for saying it was an awesome event. I love that, but it was inspired by Bitcoin 2013, which I still think is like the coolest Bitcoin conference to ever happen. But I mean, it was super nerdy. Everyone was staying up really late, like brainstorming Bitcoin ideas. There was a time like everyone at the conference went Star Trek movie together. Like it at Bitcoin 2014, or I mean at Mo's conference in Miami, BTC Miami. It was the first time I had ever gone to a party and there were naked people painted. I think they were painted blue.
At the Clevelander. Yeah.
Clevelander. And I had never seen that before in real life, like that, like just like, yo, what's up? Like, you want a little sushi or something? I mean, so and like every bubble since, the parties have like one-upped from there. Thank you, Junseth. You're setting the appropriate the appropriate. The conference, Dan, that you mentioned that happened in Las Vegas, conference is also Ethereum birth. So that's where Anthony Diorio and Vitalik met. And
is that before or after Vitalik was sleeping on his couch?
Sleeping on who?
Diorio's.
That was before.
That's what I figured.
Hey, David, you guys want to try like turning off the video and then maybe the audio will, it'll be like perfect then?
Am I breaking up?
Yeah.
Yeah, once in a while.
Let's fiddle with it real quick. You guys keep going.
What up,
about
Jason?
your favorite?
Yeah, there was. I think the May 2013 conference was funny because I had built my first mobile product and I didn't know how to launch a mobile product or market it or even think from a product mindset, like a product manager mindset. But I went through and I cold pitched everyone I met at the May 2013 San Jose conference. I would meet someone and I'd go, hey, what app do you use to check the price of Bitcoin on your phone? And then I'd show them my product. So there's a few people, I'm not sure, I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's a few OGs. If you talk to them, like I remember Dan cold pitching me his product the first time. So that was kind of fun. I think the energy back then, everyone is building something. Like you're either selling T-shirts or pens, or you're coding up something, or you're building like a new product or service or an exchange. Everyone is doing an exchange too. 2013, 2014, everyone is doing an exchange. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yeah, even I built an exchange. I mean, I never actually marketed. I never actually did anything with it. But I mean, everyone was working on an exchange for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, everyone made an exchange back then. It was just a thing to do. It was. Yeah, it was. What's like Travis Skewer's exchange? He had like his exchange down in SoCal. There was a bunch. I mean, so many.
That was when exchanges were the stable point of their day.
I haven't answered this yet, though. My favorite conference was Bruce Fenton's second Satoshi Roundtable.
That's when you guys snuck in, right?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Like,
that was fun.
I've rarely attended conferences as an attendee, and I usually have only ever attended them as an antagonist.
I remember you guys messaging me before and like we're here and like what's going on, and it's like you guys just like showed up out of nowhere, and it was,
we had a lot of leakers, Eric.
Yeah.
So for anyone who doesn't know, I mean we've when we were doing Bitcoin Uncensored, Bruce Fenton tried to start this Satoshi Roundtable, which I guess he's done a number of these now. He wanted to be the Bitcoin Illuminati, and we thought that was hilarious. So a bunch of our fans told us where the event was occurring, and it happened to be in our backyard. So we just we became members of the same club, and we joined.
They snuck in wearing sombreros and like Mexican outfits, and they were recording live from the bathrooms.
No, that's you're mixing too. Although we did record Michael Turpin going to the bathroom. Michael Turpin went to the bathroom, and we thought we would ambush him when he came out, but he was in there for a good 40 minutes. So like we lost interest and we ran out of tape.
So I will give a special shout out to that event because that was the one where they were trying to basically bring a resolution to the block size civil war that was starting, and like a lot of the core people were there, and Brian from Coinbase was there, and everyone tried to peer pressure Brian into agreeing to a like compromise agreement plan at this event.
We were talking about the Satoshi Roundtable still.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
It's worth noting that that Alpaca Socks Vanderhoosen was there as well.
It wasn't so. I mean, but it wasn't so much that people were trying to pressure Brian Armstrong. I felt more like basically like you had Bruce kind of had this idea that maybe we could make the peace at this event, and I told him that it was way too ambitious. Like he was just like setting his hopes way too high. I think he realized it pretty quickly. But initially, like the hope was that we could kind of settle on some kind of common ground or something. And it was pretty clear that it was not going to be resolved by the end of that event. But it was good to see everyone face to face and kind of like get a sense for where everyone was on that stuff at the time.
Well, so what was interesting to me is like when that debate was happening in the room, there was a moment where like most people were in agreement on something and were really, really laying the pressure on Brian, who at this time is like maybe 29 years old, 30 years old. And I mean, you have a room full of executives of the biggest Bitcoin companies, like leaning on, hey, commit to coming to an agreement. And he just said, no, like, I'm not going to be peer pressure. No. And he just like said it like definitively.
And I don't think there was anything to agree on at that point, though. I mean, nobody really had any kind of plan that everyone was going to say yes to.
Does anybody remember Craig Wright's little girl man who was there?
Oh, the Tulip Trust representative?
The Nguyen kid who wouldn't be on tape. She wouldn't tell us who she was, and she didn't become important until like 3 months later. And like I remember I was sitting there with Chris, and they started saying her name, and I was like, that person, that sort of like ambiguously gendered human being at the Satoshi Roundtable 2 might be the person that they're talking about. So I Googled that person, and sure enough. So Bruce Fenton let in that little that girl or guy, and they were part of the event.
I do remember that. She ended up trying to charge people like $400 an hour for consulting fees or something.
For real? Wow.
Yeah, all very weird. Well, so I guess to end the story on Brian, though, he stood up for like, I mean, not that I agree with the guy, but he stood up for his perspective I disagree with. But it was very impressive. And then like to see his email that he sent out the other day about Coinbase culture and how like if you have a problem with it, then like here's the door. Also a very kind of like principled badass move. So that
might be the first actual like badass move that I actually like really think that he might have actually done the right thing on.
I mean, the thing is, like I think the guy has the right intentions, and I think that he tries to do what he believes in. He just some of the stuff he believes in is dumb, but
Craig Wright?
No, Brian Armstrong.
Oh, Brian. Oh, Open Bazaar is stupid.
That's Brian Hoffman. Brian Hoffman.
Yeah,
Brian Armstrong is Coinbase.
I'm proud of what Brian did this week with the gender stuff.
Open Bazaar, you're great. That was just a joke. We love you. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm out here in Silicon Valley, and that was pretty controversial what Brian did, which I don't really consider controversial. I mean, we're here to fucking work, right? That's the whole point of going to a job. It's not a political, You're not supposed to have political debates internally as like a point of like getting product shipped.
That is a very highly offensive.
How
opinion.
dare you say that? How dare you say that?
I know. And sorry. Yep.
I mean, at the-
Apologies. I should punish myself and be canceled. My bad.
Fortunately,
point,
no one can cancel you here because we have very few people that watch this show. So it's okay, Dan. You're safe.
Hey, Mike in Space, I saw that you tweeted. I can't respond right now because I'm in Twitter jail.
So Dan, talk to us for a second about what the reaction that Coinbase announcement was in SF, and like how shocked and horrified are people?
Yeah, I mean, I've got some buddies who work over there, so obviously they're all like, well, this is like a little shocking internally, culture-wise. I think, Silicon Valley companies are really, I mean, I've been out here for 7 years. It's a fucking weird place, man. I mean, Silicon Valley is the most open place in the world not to speak your mind. Like, you cannot at all. Silicon Valley is not diverse by any means of the word. Like,
No, it's very white.
very white, very Asian Indian, like very high concentrations of that. But like, for example, I've never once worked with someone with a country accent until about 6 months ago, actually. But Kraken is remote first, so we have folks all over the place. But I mean, we're talking like not one in thousands of people at Uber, thousands. Like, you're telling me that there's no qualified people from like middle America, like up in Minnesota or down south in like Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas?
I'm going to stop you right there. I'm from Minnesota. So this is the kind of person they have there. So
I guess that explains it.
Yeah.
We're very middle of the road.
Well, and Uber only gets so many work visas per year, and to spend them on Middle America would just really be wasting them, frankly, for them. So you can't blame
I
them.
think Dan is wrong. I've got a lot of people hired by Uber in Minnesota. I use the app and they come.
Well, those aren't employees; those are contractors.
Since I was making a joke.
California begs the ripper, Dan.
Well, that's actually still up for proposal with Prop 22, but yeah. I mean, if California does it, they have to rewrite contractor law, which means they have to reevaluate every single contractor for every position across every industry in California, which is insane.
People that at Coinbase, are they talking about like, are people threatening to quit actually, or are they rolling over, or is there like, are people saying like, let's revolt from the inside? Like, I'm curious on the situation. I'm surprised I'm surprised.
I mean, look, like Coinbase is typically full of folks that are not crypto people at all. Like, these are not Coinbase people, are Silicon Valley people. Like, none of them, I mean, not none, a very small percentage actually know. Like, there are people there who are Bitcoiners who are afraid to say they're Bitcoiners. There are most of people there have no idea what crypto really is. I mean, they barely understand at a fundamental level what the hell.
That's true. I can confirm Charlie Lee worked there.
Well, the culture was a little bit different back then. I actually visited
I
Coinbase
personally
once.
like Charlie.
Yeah.
I personally like Charlie. I think Charlie's a good guy. But yeah, I mean, like fundamentally, they basically, a lot of the employees are just like, oh, blockchain's like a database, right? Like, I mean, you got to remember that Silicon Valley people jump from job to job because it's hot. Like, they don't actually care about the industry. Like, folks working at Uber, when I was there in 2016, Uber was the hottest tech company you could work at in Silicon Valley. They were all ex-Facebook. But they weren't at Uber because they love ride sharing. They were at Uber because it was hot. Same with Coinbase. A lot of folks jumped in Silicon Valley from Uber, Lyft, Airbnb, Google, Facebook, and they were like, oh, well, Coinbase is hot, late 18, like early 18. They're like, great, I'm going to jump on board. It's a rocket ship. I've done this for the last 3 tech companies I've worked at. And so most folks really don't understand.
Don't they call those unicorn hunters?
Huh?
Unicorn hunters?
Sure, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, unicorn hunters. I like that. So yeah, basically,
that's my word. I made that up. So,
like, most of these people don't really believe in libertarian ideology. Now, I'm overly generalizing. I'm sure they're all nice people. I'm just saying, like, crypto ethos wise, I think there's very few who like totally agree with like OG. Like, back in our day, I mean, we were the vast majority of us were libertarians, right? Like, we're here for freedom. We're here for freedom of speech, no matter what you want to say, even if I consider it highly offensive. And a lot of the West Coast, like, social justice warrior types, are very, very against free speech. This happened post 2016 with the Trump election. So what happened, and I was out here, I remember seeing this distinct shift where like the liberals were typically the folks who fought for free speech no matter what. Like they were like, I don't care what you have to say, but free speech is like, we'll die on that hill. Also, they were very anti NSA, DEA, like they were very anti intelligence agencies. Post 2016, to delegitimize Trump's election results, they basically sided with the defense industry and the intelligence agencies to like, look at all this evidence that Trump manipulated the election. Plus, they thought that the fake news undermined the entire democratic process. So it created this slippery slope where all of a sudden the West Coast liberals were now like, oh, I should censor speech. And I'm like, hey guys, wait a second. So who fact checks the facts, fact checkers? Like who like evaluates the censors? Like, I agree in principle, like you shouldn't have like blatantly false information everywhere, but like the reality of implementing that is near impossible. Like how would you possibly know what is the truth? I mean, that is a super subjective thing. And so I felt like I was taking crazy pills in 2016 where the entire West Coast shifted to like, yes, we should censor.
This Dan, is why I have been saying for some time now that the parties switched in 2020, which means that Democrats are now racist.
Yeah, I mean, now you're seeing like really like large stretches of the imagination going towards, I'm not going to like label things specifically, but like just seeing like people's minds stretch to this absolute extreme to justify certain rationality is just insane. I mean, I don't know how you possibly are advocates for free speech, but then also agree with censorship. What happens when they censor you someday? Like, it's just totally incoherent. Like, it's incoherent ideology. And I think what happened was that, like Trump just like made their minds explode. Like they weren't able to conceptualize.
He's a great troll. He's the best troll I think I've ever seen.
I don't know. I think Trump ripped it off, the Band-Aid off, but like that was developing long before Trump. I mean, that's not something you can just flip a switch and make happen. That's something deeper than that.
Well,
no, but Trump tapped into it very deeply. I mean, yeah, he knows how to troll very, very well.
Definitely.
Hey, so Dan, not to cut you off, but a quick question for you. So, I think Jesse and Kraken have done an incredible job of like trying to hire Bitcoin OGs and keep like the original ethos. And like, I know several people on y'all's executive team that are like free fucking thinkers, which is way more than most large Bitcoin companies can say now. But like, how would that message that Brian sent out at your company? Because I know that there are some of that like Unicorn Hunter SJW crowd that's seeped into the edges of Kraken. So I mean, like, could you imagine getting that email one morning from Jesse and how like would there be like fucking hell from that?
I mean, I don't want to speak on Jesse's behalf as to like what he might send or what he might say, but in terms of Jesse's core ethos, he's a very big libertarian, freedom-focused guy. He doesn't have a lot of patience for West Coast politics. So I've got a feeling that, he would probably not enjoy employees being distracted by these certain issues. And I really haven't seen it.
I guess what I'm saying is with the people at your company, like, would it be disruptive amongst like team, like, would there be people that would quit over something like that? And like, why do you think it is that it's so hard to, even at a company dominated by like Bitcoin types, it's so hard to like filter that?
Look, I mean, there's like as you scale a company, I mean, Kraken's almost at 1,000 people. Like, this is huge. You can't preserve that core ethos of like the OG core all the way through. There's eras and epochs of changes. So hopefully in the cultural values, you can preserve that. But certainly not everyone who joins a company is going to be, 100%, let's go do it for that mission. They might just be career folks, and that's fine. Some career folks are really good at what they do. And that's why we'd like to hire them, is that they're good at what they do and they come in and they do good work. And that's what they're there for. And they don't necessarily have to be married to the mission, or they don't have to have 90% of their portfolio in Bitcoin like some of us degenerates do. But I do think that Kraken's ethos is very crypto OG, and I think Jesse's made it pretty explicit how he feels about certain topics, on Twitter and other places, in terms of, I think, his just his own personal views on things. He's very tolerant of in terms of different views being spoken publicly. So For example, like I am free to say what I'd like about Bitcoin, which is really, really cool. And I respect Jesse a lot for that. Jesse is a crypto OG. I wouldn't say he's like a Bitcoin maximalist. I think he's really into the original crypto ethos. Whereas I, myself, and Pierre Rochard are very big Bitcoin maximalists, but he, even though he may not agree 100% with how we think about Bitcoin, he still agrees with our ability to speak freely. And so I think Jesse represents like what you exactly want out of a CEO, which is that flexibility to say what you want. But then when you come into the office, you get your work done, and we take off that hat and we go do work. Like I work when I'm on the job, I'm working from a Kraken perspective. I'm doing what's best for Kraken. When I'm off the job, I can talk about Bitcoin all I'd like. Hopefully, there are some moments when I can marry them. If it's good for Bitcoin and good for Kraken, then those are really cool moments where I hope to demonstrate to the Bitcoin community over the long run. You know, maybe there's some really cool things we can do at Kraken that are good for Bitcoin, but also good for Kraken. So, you know, testing, coming up with different methods in which we could do that, testing it, you know, these are all things that we'll have to do before we roll out something into production. But I'm optimistic that there's going to be some really cool things that we can do that are definitely like a hat tip towards the Bitcoin community in terms of like us being, you know, having that core Bitcoin ethos.
Dan, that sounds like an incredible endorsement of, you know, Kraken spending a huge sum of money with us at Bitcoin 2021 and at the Bitcoin magazine. So I just want to thank you in advance for that commitment from Dan.
Okay.
Really right now, you know, the hat tip. Thank you.
Speaking of
with
marrying those two things, Dan, speaking of that, I'm getting married on Saturday.
Congratulations.
That's why I'm getting drunk.
Dude, well, all right. A
If
quick
you need an excuse, right?
cheers to that, to Junseth. All right. May there not be too many more of you running around the world, but no, I'm just kidding. We need many more. So, all right. Well, I'm going to take a point that Dan just said. I'm going to pivot the conversation. I'm going to completely take over Brandon's ability to ask the next question.
Go for it.
So you mentioned something that I think is really interesting thread to tap into, which is that Jesse is not a Bitcoin maximalist. He's more, let's say, what's like the crypto equivalent of like pansexual, you know, like open to many ideas, let's say. And Eric, I think that you would second that early Bitcoiners had a different perspective on how they look at other coins and other
Absolutely. Yeah,
other
for sure.
and talk about that. Like, why has that changed? Where, you know, the most vocal Bitcoin maximalists, except for Dan, are for the most part a later invention, and not that many super early OG Bitcoiners, you know, are in that group. Why is that?
Well, I mean, early on, a lot of people came in from different backgrounds, and I think that to really understand Bitcoin and to really understand the space in general, you really need to have a little bit of background in a lot of different areas, or a little bit of experience, or at least like know a little bit. And like, you know, I come from a developer. I was been doing software development for a long time, and my background is kind of in tech. I didn't really have too much of like the financial, you know, economic, monetary side too much at the beginning, but then it became obviously like the big focus. In the beginning, I was really just fascinated by the tech, and I was kind of trying to see how we can improve the tech a little bit. It became very clear pretty early on that just because of the monetary side of it, it was very, very difficult to muck around with that too much. And in fact, one of the reasons that I actually contributed to Ethereum in the beginning was because I wanted there to be a little more diversity and different ideas. And I also worked a little bit with the Ripple stuff. The Ripple stuff went on completely off the rails in a totally different direction. The Ethereum stuff did too, but the Ethereum stuff still kind of like was a little bit interesting from just kind of like just kind of like a research project to see what happens when you try all these different kinds of things. And I didn't want that to happen on Bitcoin. I participated on other projects too. In the beginning, I think that a lot of people that were focused on the tech were trying different things to see what might work, what ways to improve Bitcoin, you know, how we can make this thing better from a tech perspective. But then, you know, during the fork wars and, you know, that whole thing that happened basically made it very clear that the tech was actually very, very difficult to do much with. The monetary side was really kind of where the focus was, and I think that the whole maximalist, or quote unquote maximalist, thing started was really the realization that money really is kind of like a winner take all kind of thing, and it's a zero sum thing. And a lot of scammers came in and started just making all these coins, and a lot of the opposition to it, to other coins, was mostly just against the scammers that were just using Bitcoin's name to try to sell basically fraud to people. I think that as time has passed,
And Eric, can we just highlight real quick? Is there a specific scammer you're speaking about? Like, are you talking about Craig Wright?
I mean, well, that's like, there's just too many examples. But I mean, Craig Wright was like a whole. He was one of the few that actually managed to create a big problem within Bitcoin just because of the influence that he managed to have on some people that I was.
I just wanted to take the opportunity with that to just call him out. So that sorry, we don't have to talk about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was one of the ones that most hit me directly. I mean, a lot of these other scams, basically, yeah, people got screwed and whatever, but it didn't really impact Bitcoin too much. People were kind of afraid that maybe it would take some of Bitcoin's market share, but I wasn't too concerned about that because I think that in the long run, really, they just didn't have the fundamentals to be able to do that. But, the whole Craig Wright thing was kind of a little bit scary for a little bit just because of the level of influence he managed to have on some people that were very deeply involved in Bitcoin. And so that was kind of a very interesting experience, and very, it was an eye-opening experience just to see how human nature works in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it was that was pretty weird to see.
The human condition is the
So this is where I step in and I make the outrageous claim that Vitalik wrote his first post on Bitcoin maximalism after having an argument with me and Chris on Bitcoin Uncensored. So we technically are the first Bitcoin maximalists.
So I do want to that the funniest game show or word show I've ever seen to this day, and actually something that we want to recreate at some point in time here. Junseth, we're going to have to hit you up on a licensing deal. The Scammies is the best award show I've ever heard, ever. So
I'll sell it to you for $10.
Sold. Dan, take us away on that story. I'm sorry about that. I just had to intercede.
Yeah, I mean, so my background's in finance, and then I got into tech, and like for me, it was always about the 21 million hard cap. I'm like, well, of a fucking course, this is the breakthrough. Like, it's a breakthrough in monetary policy and like the genius incentive model construction around this. Like the code enables an incentive model and rules that humans can play by. Like that's the innovation. It's not the actual code. I mean,
Sure.
Bitcoin's code was like spliced together from like 10 different innovations or 50. There's that chart that shows the like Bitcoin's genetic code from like 50 years worth of like research and development, right? That all leads up to Bitcoin. Like the innovation was putting it all together. And it's not really like people are like, oh, is it the MySpace or Facebook? It's not really that at all. It's more of like, you've done it perfectly. And in tech, people lose their minds when you tell them this. So working in tech, folks, engineers especially, are like, wait, no way we ship this the first time and it's right. Like, there's no way. We always, same with a PM, we ship and iterate. So we ship the product and we iterate. Think about how different Facebook is compared to when you first used it a decade ago. Like, it's really, really different. And they do that because tastes shift and they have to compete with other folks coming into the space, like it's social media. But with Bitcoin, it is perfect. Almost, I mean, there were some tweaks that needed to be had in terms of there's some bugs, but it was shipped near perfect. And I don't think software engineers can really grok what that means. Finance folks get it. They're like, oh, the monetary policy, boom. But, and by the way, I'm just speaking broad strokes. Software engineers typically can't grok the fact that like,
Dan, that's because Bitcoin wasn't a computer science problem.
Right. Yeah,
It was
it's a monetary and human incentive problem.
Yeah,
Like,
and like, I mean, I think that Dan's right, but I think that everyone forgets that the thing that the only thing that Bitcoin innovates on really is the scaled hash rate. It's the fact that like it responds to increasing efficiency in technology in a way that is really super stupidly elegant.
yeah, the difficulty adjustment was a brilliant breakthrough. I think
That's
I had a back
the only thing that it does that's really interesting compared to other projects. Like the fact that you can basically have a receipt for the amount of energy you burn decentralizedly in a way that is verifiable is incredible. It's utterly inconceivable but it's obvious. It just uses like sort of this probabilistic hash function that basically measures how much it takes to like, find some random number, and then it can scale. The result is that it scales with technology. The more advanced technology gets, the harder the difficulty goes, and that's all. That's all innovated on.
And that's what's so beautiful about proof of work is that it's essentially a physics problem. Like this actually isn't really code; it's more physics. And that, coming to these realizations, this is where I felt compelled to start writing this down and like prophesizing it myself. Was that I came to these realizations and I'm like, holy shit, like this is fucking incredible.
I mean, it's the dawn of life. I mean, basically, I mean, it is a completely thermodynamic event that if you didn't watch it happen in real time, no one could explain to you how it happened. Like, 100 years from now, it won't make sense trying to tell someone how the progression of things that happened to make this materialize.
Yeah, I mean, Satoshi, a fun question that someone's asked me is they ask me, Dan, what question would you ask Satoshi if you were given a chance? If you could find Satoshi, what's the one question you'd ask him? My answer to that was what led you to Bitcoin? I want to know what the hell fucking Satoshi read. Like, what the hell did he watch or read that led him to come up with Bitcoin? I mean, I just want to retrace the steps, because it's just such a crazy breakthrough. I mean, and I think it's one person personally. That's a personal opinion. But just the brilliance of it and the polymath nature of it, of like physics, code, human incentives, monetary policy, evolution of money. I mean, it was just so many different things put together. I would just be really curious to see how they got there.
Dan, I think it's like, I think that all the credit has to be given to Adam Back, though, who like had 90% of this already done.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Adam Back.
I think you can ask Adam Back how he got to where he was. And I think you can backtrace it then, further on. Because like
But Adam was in it for a very different reason. He was trying to prevent email spam, right?
I'm well aware, but like the fact that someone took Adam's conception and applied it to money isn't really what's interesting.
That's really the breakthrough right there.
Right. Yeah, that's the breakthrough. The breakthrough is that Adam said, hey, we can use hash functions as an economic function. That's the breakthrough. And that's what allows Bitcoin to exist. Adam Back is, in my opinion, the most important person in this process. And he reminds me of myself. No, he reminds me of he's not Adam wasn't like a programmer so much as he was more a guy who just understood. He was curious about cryptography. I mean, you know him better than I do, Eric. Is he a cryptographer? What is his sort of actual like function?
Yeah, I mean, he's a cypherpunk. That's he really he's
So the only thing Adam Back didn't solve, like here's the reality. If Adam Back had solved the Moore's problem, the Moore's law problem of the hash function, if he had figured that out, which he could have done by talking to me because I could have figured it. No, I'm kidding. If Adam Back had sort of figured out the Moore's law problem of the hash function, he would have invented Bitcoin in the 90s, and it would have languished for a while until people took it up. And it might have started as email, but it would have eventually evolved into money. And I think that like people don't appreciate the fact that it was money that someone sort of proposed is incidental to the fact that Adam Back had all of the elements in place.
Yeah, but the Bitcoin was planted in the middle of a financial crisis at an extremely opportune moment for people to be aware of it.
Yeah, the timing was critical.
Absolutely.
No, so and I want to, Junseth, come back to you and I have a couple questions for you real quick. So, one kind of question. First off, it's a hilarious idea that some guy tries to create something to block email and then block spam, and someone else sees that and is like, that's actually the start of the next financial system. I mean, it's kind of like a hilarious thought.
Well, it makes a lot of sense when you realize that almost all of the world can be degraded to value. You can figure out what the value of someone's time is. You can figure out what the value of anything is. Like, whether you use multivariate analysis or whatever, you can figure out what the value of something is. I mean, there's no reason that it shouldn't have iterated from email to money because the entire.
But sorry to interrupt, but like No, this was a fucking miraculous conception. This was not like, oh, it was going to happen. I think we're in one of like.
I agree, Dan. I don't disagree with you, by the way, like on that.
Like,
I'm just saying that like it would have like had Adam Back figured out the Moore's law part of his algorithmic function. Had he proposed that, like I would firmly believe that this could have iterated to money in the same way that not BitPesa, but like what's the in Africa they're trading like cell phone cards. M-Pesa. The same way that M-Pesa evolved into money, I would not have been surprised if Hashcash had evolved into money.
I don't think so though, because I think of it as like an evolution of a species, right? So like there's probably a lot of very unintelligent life across the universe, a bunch of slime molds, like a very, very basic primitive organisms, right? Like I bet there's a bunch all over the universe. We don't know yet. We'll find out someday. But I've got a feeling that like intelligent life is extremely random, like very, very random. And there are minuscule things that can happen that could throw off that trajectory of a planet, you know, creating an intelligent species. Like, for example, a random asteroid hit, you know, 100,000 years too early, because if it had come, you know, 100,000 years later, they would have been like a spacefaring species and they would have been off the planet, or they could have diverted the asteroid. So I think like Bitcoin's probability of succeeding, like for example, some people say if Bitcoin dies, something else will just replace it. I don't believe that. I think if Bitcoin dies, everything dies forever, like, or at least for 2 generations or so.
I want to jump in real quick because Dan, you're now getting down a thread that I want to come back to, and I think that maybe is like the next topic of conversation. That, sorry, I'm completely derailing your show. You might as well just walk away.
This was all my idea. Don't worry.
But
Dan, is it his show? Is he the one that like came up with this?
Oh yeah. But you know, when you bring David on, you just kind of lose control of the steering wheel. So that's why he's.
I'm reckless.
David's a real dick.
They call me the big dick. All right.
When we get to the part where we talk about the Bitcoin bull.
Wait. Okay. We will get there. But Junseth, before we go to what kind of more cosmic with this conversation, I wanted to circle back. One, you said you had a question that you'd ask Satoshi if you met him. I want to hear what that is. And then 2, you mentioned this kind of backstory that you were the original Bitcoin maximalist, and to kind of finish out this thread about like what's changed over time with Bitcoin, so that people's worldview has shifted. Like, you know, you were the Bitcoin maximalist before there was even a need for such a term, and you know, at a time when, let's say, like I'm a Bitcoin maximalist because I've seen everything go wrong, and so over time, like my naivety has been exploited, and now it's like I have no naivety left. I'm like maximally cynical, and that's why I'm like now a Bitcoin maximalist. But like with you had this worldview back when Ethereum was still an inkling, and there was no track record of booms and busts. Like there wasn't a track record of all the failures that there are now to be able to kind of hang your hat on and be like, you know, this is why this is doomed. So talk to me about like how did y'all see that as so obvious so early?
Yeah. So you're wrong. You're wrong. There were a shit ton of booms and busts, and we recognized them early. You know, whether it was what's the Dan Larimer one?
BitShares.
BitShares. There were tons and tons of them.
Yeah.
And I mean the reality is, Dan, I mean I've thought a lot about Bitcoin and what it reduces to, and I think that the fact is that the hash function is an important function. It really does. It is a receipt for how much energy is burned. So like once you realize that all of these chains are in competition for exactly the same resource. And like once you realize,
I like that.
Yeah, that's for example, like when people talk about like, oh, you know, diversity is good in terms of number of layer 1 chains because that decreases like going concern risk for the whole space. I'm like, actually, no, it's the opposite.
Correct.
The more chains you have, the less proof of work you have consolidated into one chain, aka the less security spend you have. So like actually, it's very unlikely we'll see more than a few chains long term, very, very long term, have enough security spend through transaction fees alone to be an adequate, you know, payment to the miners where they won't feel, you know, and that they won't have a secondary economic incentive to reorganize transactions. Like basically only Bitcoin and Ethereum have that.
Dan's got it. He's up here in my screen, but he's probably in a different spot on YouTube.
You're above me in my screen, so
Nice.
I just interpret as Dan is number one. So good job. So Junseth, talk a little bit more about just like the,
Well, let me talk a little bit about smart contracts, because I think that people don't the idea that like decentralized smart contracts matter is, in my opinion, absolute insanity. Because the only thing that really matters with regard to smart contract, I mean, like if you want to reduce what a smart contract is a multi-sig wallet. That is all it is. There's no difference between a multi-sig wallet and a smart contract. And the only thing that is interesting about the function of a smart contract is the oracle. So when Ethereum begins proposing decentralized smart contract space that they're going to have on the chain, my question is, how do you decentralize the oracle? And you literally cannot. So there's nothing interesting about Ethereum. And that's the only project I think that has sort of given Bitcoin a run for its money over the years. Every other project reduces to energy and or sort of this like proof of work function. So to me, when I look at the space, my question is, what's interesting about it? What is different about this? What is unique? What is value add in the space? And there's literally almost nothing that I can think of that is value add. Not in DeFi, not in Ethereum, not in smart contracts. There's nothing that's really that interesting. And I'm the one with my shirt off, so I shouldn't be the only one saying that.
So beautifully said, but I will point out one interesting feature it has is that you don't get shut down by the CFTC and FBI if you sprinkle a little bit of DeFi on it. So
all they have to do is shut out the oracle.
Say it again.
All they have to do is shut down the oracle.
Yeah, but they don't. They don't.
The oracle problem
and slam
the oracle problem is a huge problem. I mean,
the oracle problem is the only interesting problem in the space. Like, why Ethereum is uninteresting until the oracle problem is solved. And here's the thing: once the oracle problem is solved, and that's not what Ethereum solves, despite what people think. Once the oracle problem is solved, you can import that solution to Bitcoin. So you don't need an Ethereum. You don't need anything else. Like Bitcoin maximalism at its core, like I think Vitalik called us Bitcoin maximalists. And I think he's astute and correct in calling us that. But because he's naming a thing that exists, which is that like there are people that believe Bitcoin will reign supreme at some point. And I've thought a lot about like what that means. And what it really means is that like there are people who believe in a probabilistic world where Bitcoin wins. And I can tell you all the reasons I think Bitcoin wins. Number one, I think that Bitcoin wins because the hash algorithm is the least fucked with. It's the most transparent, obvious hash algorithm. It's the most understood, the most understood algorithm for the hash function, which means that there's not a lot of rigmarole that needs to be gone through in order to like do hashing. It's very obvious. And every inch of rigmarole is what we call risk. And a risk in a financial sense is what we call cost, right? So that's the number one reason why like mining Bitcoin is the cheapest coin to mine over time. It doesn't have to always be that way. It doesn't have to start out that way. Like you look at a lot of these charts of like profitability and mining of any of these coins, and you have like Ethereum way up here and Bitcoin way down here at the time that Ethereum launches, but they all regress asymptotically towards zero. So which means that they move closer and closer to zero, because mining is a perfectly competitive market. And if you think about it like that, there's never been a market quite like mining. Mining is this market where you submit your transaction, and anybody, regardless of who they are, regardless of what they've done, can mine your transaction. They can be a pedophile. They can be a prisoner. They can be any sort of like terrible thing. They could be a Nazi, anything. And if they win the hash, they mine your transaction. There's nothing you can do about it. You buy their service.
The only thing like it is photosynthesis.
Or well, photosynthesis or maybe like farming. Farming might be the closest the closest analogy. It doesn't matter who farms your food. It doesn't matter who mines your Bitcoin. Anybody can do it. So what that means is that because everything is competing for the same resource, all of these chains are going to grow closer and closer in terms of profitability to zero, which means that Bitcoin, given that it is the least complex of any of these algorithms, is going to be the only profitable one left standing.
I'm not sure that the complexity of the algorithm is really what sets Bitcoin apart. I'd say that it has to do more with like the whole culture that developed, and it just has like this whole kind of like myth, the founding myth, and the consensus process, and the way that everyone just kind of, you know, and the economic incentives that drive everyone to support one chain.
I mean, I agree with you, Eric. I think that all of that is very important in terms of like the base support that Bitcoin has. I'm just talking about the economics of Bitcoin, why there is eventually only going to be one chain. Like you're correct in that, in building a narrative and building marketing, like all of that works. But Ethereum has better marketing. So when all is said and done, the question is who has better economics? Because like you can market all you want. Eventually, at some point, miners are going to ask the question, which chain do I make the most money mining?
No, but the thing is, Ethereum doesn't have the same kind of decentralized, founding kind of, Satoshi walking away was like a genius move. Basically, it made
greatest thing that ever happened to Bitcoin.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what really sets Bitcoin apart, I think, is that the founder actually left. If the founder sticks around, that actually dooms the project.
Yeah, because he could be arrested. Do you remember when Vitalik was rumored to be dead? Can we talk about the DAO?
He gave the picture, the proof of life picture.
Oh,
man. Can we talk about the DAO? Because like I think all of us lived that, and I think that modern Bitcoiners do not remember the DAO.
So I think that's a good story to tell. So let's hit that, Junseth, and then after that, where I want to take the conversation, and this can, I don't know how much time we have scheduled, but it might be the last thing we can talk about. Is I feel like as time goes on, like you learn more about Bitcoin, but you also realize that there's so much we don't know about Bitcoin. It's almost like you reach a certain level of understanding it where the way you think about it becomes cosmic, thermodynamic, like it becomes it's deep. It's a very deep thing. And so I'm curious, like all of y'all have spent a long time thinking about it, and you had the surface level beginner experience of, oh, it's an asset that I can send to a cell phone, and now think, it's much bigger than that. Talk about kind of that change and like kind of what's cosmically with Bitcoin. Where are you at now? Like what has majorly shifted in your thinking about it?
He's framing this for himself, by the way, so we'll get to it. But first, do we want to talk about the DAO?
Like all good questions. I'm just framing them for myself.
Yeah, I mean, look,
everyone lived the DAO. Like, what do you guys remember? I mean, Eric, what happened to your brain when you remember like the Slack channel in the Ethereum Slack, like Griffin jumping in there and going, "Holy shit, the DAO's been hacked! No biggie, everybody."
Right.
I mean, look, marketing works. I stirred up a bit of controversy in the Bitcoin scene when I said, like, oh, when we all personally talk about Bitcoin, we are marketing Bitcoin to our friends, families, and random people. And they're like, oh my God, marketing is terrible. And I'm like, nothing's wrong with marketing Bitcoin. We all do it. If you talk about Bitcoin, you're marketing Bitcoin. And finally, it fucking works. All the coins that we all don't like, well, they're still around. in base, Junseth, like you have some good objective reasons as to their long-term viability, and these are rational things to think about. In the meantime, the pure marketing aspect of it trumps any sort of like objective long-term reality. So like
that's short term though, right? That's short term.
Are you talking about the DAO?
Yeah, but how short term are you talking? Because like fiat's been around for 50 years, and that's like 3 generations. So
I'm with you.
Short term could be beyond your lifetime. Which, you know what? I don't know what you guys want to see Bitcoin fucking win before I die. But yeah, I don't want to wait around 300 years to see Bitcoin finally objectively win with my super low time preference. Not marketing Bitcoin at all, or going, maybe we should counter these bullshit narratives, which is why I started writing about Bitcoin's inception, planting Bitcoin. Bitcoin.
And a caveat, also, Dan, you are invested into cryogenics, so you are kind of banking on the 300-year thing too, by the way. So just highlighting that.
Hedging the bet.
I will be cryopreserved when I die, hopefully next to hell, No, I think cryopreservation is exactly the same like crypto. Once you go down that rabbit hole, you're like, wow, you wake up, sorry, not crypto, Bitcoin. Sorry, I guess what content here.
You never worry that they're going to call you a white supremacist and get you uncryopreserved?
I would have died anyway, so it doesn't matter, right?
As an African-American transgender woman, I feel like I'll be safe. But like, I don't know about you.
Anyway, so I think I lost my train of thought here.
So Eric was asking if we're talking about the DAO or not, and
Yeah,
you're talking about it right now.
Look, like there are objectively completely centralized coins that still have billions in market cap, right? Like that is testament to just pure marketing will trump any objective reality of like the viability of these coins. Now, with Bitcoin, I see Bitcoin having very strong, the strongest fundamentals, like, and some of the only fundamentals in terms of like monetary policy. It's the only monetary policy I'll ever trust. Like Bitcoin has demonstrated many times that it will not change the 21 million hard cap. It has demonstrated that it will survive a civil war. It has demonstrated X, Y, and Z. To me, that makes, being excited about these other coins really, really difficult now. But marketing works. Like if none of us talked about Bitcoin, Bitcoin wouldn't be around. Like by talking about, we are human beings who ingest strings of data visually through our ears. And we take that and then we process it, and that changes our mind about something. That's called marketing. Then it changes our mind about something, and then we go action upon it. We go buy Bitcoin. We start to read the Bitcoin standard, et cetera. Like that's what Bitcoin marketing is. It's information about Bitcoin that we ingest, and then we go speak about. And there's different mechanisms to ingest that: Twitter, Facebook, Telegram, whatever. But yeah, these projects are testament that like it very much works. Marketing works at such a crazy level. Like I never thought back in 13 to 14 that some of these projects would survive this long. I mean, Dogecoin hasn't had like a commit in like 3 years or something, right? Like, I mean, it's crazy.
Can't kill a blockchain though. It's kind of like a zombie. It's just
Yeah, they're like viruses, man.
I will say I've been amazed at the fact that like I haven't seen an apocalypse of any chain. They've just kind of continued, and they continue with their like 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 believers. They're like the Church of Scientology.
Like
The most wealthy church there is, to point that out. But yeah,
I mean, ETC has had a ton of 51% attacks.
I hold a lot of that.
And people still use it, which is nuts.
Well, yeah.
I think there will always be a market for.
It's inherently insecure.
There will always be a market for novelty stuff, and there will always be a market for get-rich-quick stuff. And get-rich-quick stuff is always grift, right? So
that's a good point.
I think that there's always going to be people doing these kinds of things. They probably won't be very long-lived as far as like the peak scam is going to be probably something that is that happens pretty quickly, and then maybe the chain just kind of goes on for a while, but nothing really happens. I think that Bitcoin is fundamentally different because it isn't something where someone can just exit scam really easily, and it isn't really something where and it doesn't really appeal to the novelty aspect. It really is about the monetary stuff and people feeling like their savings are secure somewhere. And money talks. I mean, marketing works, but money talks. And
Eric, can we talk about running your own node? I've run into Luke Dash Jr., my favorite Bitcoiner, a number of times. The last one was at the Crypto Friends. What's that conference called? The Crypto Babies Panda
Magical Crypto Conference?
Magical Crypto Conference. The last time I ran into him was there at the first one. And I looked at him, and he had these pants, and he had a giant bubble butt. Because that's like, I don't know what kind of pants he was wearing. And he had a giant, looked like a dick in his pants. And I said, Luke, I went up to him, I said, Luke, is that a dick in your pants or is that a full node? Luke looked at me and he said, Josh, Junseth, It's a full node, and he pulled it out of his pants.
For real.
It was in fact a full node. So I thought that we could talk a
If
little
anyone
bit.
would do that, it'd be him. It's like there's nobody else on the planet that would do that.
So the best part is imagining these core devs' faces when they don't realize it's a joke that you're asking them. You know.
Well, I knew. You know what's funny is I knew that he had a full node in his pants. But like I said that to him. I said, Luke, is that a dick in your pants or a full node? And this is really the only place I could make that joke. But he did in fact. I'm not even lying. He did in fact pull out a full node from his pants.
I love Bitcoin. All right.
I absolutely love Bitcoin, and I love Luke and his beautiful new teeth. Luke, you are my favorite. You are my hero. And I am sober per God's law. And I thought that we should talk a little bit about full nodes and having one. Eric.
My battery's about to die. I need to go get my charger. Yeah, talk about something else amongst yourselves. I'll be right back.
All right. So, Eric, when you get back, you're going to have the closing remarks on this.
Okay. I'll be right back.
So, cosmic level. So, I got to say, like, Junseth, I really like your description of Bitcoin because it is very, very to the point, let's say. And, Brandon said earlier, I was asking this question to kind of set myself up, but, I have had my view of Bitcoin change a lot over time. And like, the money as fundamentally a tool to organize the world, and money as a tool to conceptualize the amount of energy that's been spent on something, and then to be able to make subjective value comparisons around, which form of energy is more valuable to you. That is really getting to the root of determining what reality is. Like, when you have everyone that has just a subjective view of the world, like, what is reality? It's like the meeting point, the mutual point that both parties can see the same truth in, which is energy. And when you think about energy,
David, real quick to just deduce, like, sort of reduce what you're saying. Like, the only thing that's true about blockchains, and this is, I think, the thing that people don't understand, the only thing that's true about blockchains is that we can verify how much energy was put into them. People think that, like, in terms of the scams and everything else that's put together, people think that blockchains are databases that are true by virtue of the fact that they're blockchains. And the only truth about a blockchain that is interesting is how much energy was burned to make that block. That's the only thing that's verifiable. Every other piece of information that's put into any block, in any blockchain, is uninteresting.
Well, what it's essentially doing is it's taking real world energy and using that to burn in a time stamping methodology to, like, burn in a record of when transactions were ordered.
Yes.
That's what it does. It's like this.
Well, and when you look at what is money, it's store of value, medium of exchange, and unit of account. Like Bitcoin, like, apply that to this Bitcoin as energy, but not like discussion. And it's like all of those pieces so clearly match against that.
Bitcoin is a thermodynamic money. Like, it is the perfect iteration of money. That's where people go, oh, well, certainly Bitcoin is not the final iteration of money. I am fully committed to the idea that, like, Bitcoin is the final evolution of money. And now within our solar
Dan, I would say this. I would say that thermodynamic money, which is what Bitcoin is the final evolution of money. Now, whether that is called Bitcoin in 100 years or 200 years, I don't care. But, like, we figured it out.
Well, it will be. You can't.
My point, Dan, is that we can now, at the very least, probabilistically determine who has burned enough energy to create the next block.
But you're removing the human element. The Lindy effect is incredibly strong. If we destroy that, we destroy it for generations.
I don't know what the Lindy effect is, so explain that to me.
Essentially, like, the longer something exists, the more likely it will exist. The momentum behind Bitcoin is another way to put it.
Yes.
The perfect iteration of Bitcoin surviving this long through all these different trials that made it stronger and more anti-fragile.
I do
Like,
want to jump.
I just don't think. So first of all, like Bitcoin will be the final money in this solar system. Now, due to latencies with the speed of light, there will likely need to be other coins for other solar systems. The Unchained Capital folks, Drew Bansal, has some phenomenal thoughts on that. He's a aerospace engineer who put that together, or he's
Or
a
we could
physicist.
have selfish mining.
It's I think it's pretty phenomenal. So that, but like when we look at
Probably the best piece on
Bitcoin-
Bitcoin space out there. You can find it on the Unchained Capital blog. It's really highly recommended.
I'll read
yeah,
that.
he talks about like the hash horizon where like you'll have hash wars between planets. I think it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Also, one of my old buddies and co-founders, Clark Moody. I don't know if you guys have ever been to his website, clarkmoody.com. He's got great data visualizations on like Bitcoin market metrics.
Dan, real quick, I have a question for you. Is the presumption though that like the Bitcoin code base would be what other planets would use?
Yeah,
Article.
That's what I would assume.
yes.
It's complicated. You should read the article.
Yeah.
I will. I haven't read that, so I will.
Like, yeah, there's some issues when you have latency between planets to where there's all sorts of things you need to do to it's complicated, I think is the best way to put it, Dave. That's a good way to put it. But yeah, I mean, Bitcoin is the final evolution of money. Like there is no better iteration past it. Like this isn't an evolution to, there won't be a more efficient or better level of money after Bitcoin. It's it. That's it.
It reduces money to its most minuscule portion, which is
Yeah,
like
the compression. It compresses it to like its maximum compression. Like you can't really make it more.
I want to push
more efficient. Then how
idea
much energy does it take to make a hash?
I just wanted to add one thing. I think there's just one very important problem with Bitcoin that still Bitcoin does not solve, which is fungibility and I think
Fuck
privacy.
off, Eric.
I mean,
you're right.
yeah, that's like the one thing that if that could be solved as well, maybe it could be the final iteration. I think that it'd be really hard to replace it with another tech and have to move to a totally different stack now.
Eric, can you talk about that? Because like Bitcoin has been looking at Schnorr. Like I think that it's important to realize that like products like Monero use a very heavy algorithm.
Hold on. I'm the totalitarian dictator of this live stream, so I'm gonna jump in. All right. So I want to push back first before the conversation moves on this idea that Bitcoin is the final money, because I think that money itself is a natural phenomenon for ordering and organizing emergent systems. And so from that perspective, I think that what we know as money is probably there is a natural phenomenon that expresses itself similarly on the cellular level, on the electromagnetic level, on the different planes of reality in which
that's too fucking spiritual for me, man.
But it's inherently true that we use prices to dictate how markets evolve, how society evolves, how human economies evolve. Well, okay, humans are a collection of cells. All right, you're a collection of biological life. At some point in time, you yourself, your consciousness, is an emergent system of all of the cells that make you up. And so, if Bitcoin and money is governing your behavior, then transitively, it's also governing the behavior of all of the cells that make you up. Like
there's no such thing as a transitive property, David. I'll teach you that right now.
Say that again.
There's no such thing as a transitive property.
Well, I think you know what I'm saying though. Like, there comes a point in time where the many become one. Like, and it happens at a different level than the many. Like the consciousness is at a different level than what any individual cell is. Just like financial markets are at a different level than any individual agent in that market. And so I think that phenomenon is going to continue. That there is a level of existence that is beyond our comprehension. Maybe it's a robotic system. Maybe it's I don't know exactly, but where there's going to have to be a money phenomenon in that system as well, because that's how you have subjective value analysis. You have to have some sort of methodology of weighing decisions against each other.
Right. So that's what money is as the unit of account. It's the measuring stick for entrepreneurial outcomes. It's the measuring stick of the economy. Now, when it comes to Bitcoin, like for the computer science folks here, or the people who are engineers here, the basic underpinning of all computer science is information theory. Like thermodynamics, by the way, I don't know if people know this, but thermodynamics and information theory
theory, yeah.
are
More
they're
fundamental than
basically
physics.
they're basically identical. Like they're basically mirrored, which means that like Bitcoin's decisions and framework, there is no like based on the laws of the universe. These are very primitive, basic ways to do it. That like you're reaching the limits of like universal sort of limits here.
If humans are the apex of existence, but I'm sure that
no, David, like the laws of the universe, like these aren't human constructs, these are science constructs. Like you can't break these.
I think the point is that like Bitcoin is degraded to the most fundamental form of energy, which is heat.
Yeah.
It is, and so that's why it's the money of our reality. But
no, David. To my point that like Bitcoin, the reason Bitcoin wins is because it is the most fundamental, smallest unit of energy. It literally is entropy at its finest. It measures entropy.
David, this isn't the theory of relativity. These are the laws of thermodynamics. Like they have been proven for 150 years.
And I'm saying that each of these different levels of reality, they're all thermodynamic systems. They all match the thermodynamic rules.
No, but Dan, none have so efficiently matched it as Bitcoin.
I don't think you can make the argument that biological life is less efficient than Bitcoin is. Like
I certainly can. I certainly can make that argument. The human eye is a great example. The human eye is constructed backwards.
No, I'm talking about the evolution from the first single-celled thing that existed to where we are now. The amount of
I'm just saying, like that is a random process. And the beauty of Bitcoin is that it is a random process that literally measures over time the exact amount of energy used to burn any given block into the blockchain.
But there are other
that is fundamentally the most perfect way to measure the advancement of the blockchain, Bitcoin, and money, the creation of money. It's a thermodynamic creation of money.
I'm probably not explaining myself well because I don't disagree with what you guys are saying in terms of like what's the apex money for humans. Like I think that there is a level of existence beyond our comprehension.
The apex money of banana, like monkeys, because it's bananas.
I really hate this answer too when people are like, well, we don't know what we don't know. Who knows? They'll be like aliens someday. And it's like, no, like we aren't fucking 1,700 people living in fucking like petticoats and shit in the middle of like, an old stone building. Like we are very advanced. No, but hold on. Our understanding of the universe is not this linear path of like we're always learning more and more at the exact same rate. It's more asymptotic. Like
and there's also setbacks. I mean, there's also like civilizational declines, and people have like forgotten. Like there are a lot of like ancient ideas that were destroyed and rediscovered and stuff like that.
Yeah, like the level that we can process, and analyze data is at levels that like me with a computer, I could have more processing power than 1,000 years of human history. Like, so we're looking at
processing power, but there's a reason why we can't make AI that's as smart as what humans are, because humans are extremely complex.
These are not rational sort of arguments to make. You cannot say that like, oh, well, back, people always go, well, in 1500, we thought the world was flat. Well, now we could think that something else. No,
that's not the argument I'm making. The argument I'm making is that, like, on the cellular level, that cells are unaware of the existence of humans or the existence of society. They're unaware. They're not consciously aware that plane of reality exists. But it does, and they do make up the components of it. And without cells, there would be no biological ecosystems that develop on top of them. So there is levels of reality that are.
This is the bullshit. This is the flat earthworm bullshit, where it's like if we lived in a 2D environment and someone finally showed you 3D, you wouldn't even be able to comprehend it. But fuck that. No, like we grok our reality in a very, very astute way. Like, yes, there are things we don't know yet, but we are increasingly knowing almost everything, and we will reach a state very soon. Hold on. In the next few hundred years, I have no doubt we will reach a state where we almost know absolutely everything. Like, there's no reason to believe that we won't, with exponential increases in processing power, data ingestion capabilities. Like, to pretend that we're some sort of like still primitive species where things take forever to like forever to figure out. No, who knows? There might be this giant breakthrough. No, like there will be incremental breakthroughs, but like
It just
we're
seems
not going to
extremely improbable
It's
to
irrelevant.
say-
Wait a
we're not
second.
going to
It's
reject
irrelevant.
thermodynamics. Like, let's put it that way. Like, we're not
Yeah,
going to like all of a sudden throw out the rules of physics and be like, oh,
No,
relativity,
all of-
thermodynamics, those all don't
Dan,
matter.
wait a second, David. I think that the important point is that we know that the most fundamental root of thermodynamic energy is the output of heat.
I agree, 100%.
Okay, we all agree on that.
100%.
Bitcoin
Yeah.
perfectly measures how much entropy is being entered into the universe, into the teleos of Christ. Bitcoin perfectly measures it.
But we're not quite there yet because the technology still, I mean, there's a lot of inefficiencies. I mean, in principle, if you could, make if you could hash at a much greater efficiency. I mean, I don't know what the limits, like the natural limits of that are, but I mean, better technology in principle could, have a higher hash power for lower amounts of energy. And I mean, we've already seen several evolutions of that kind of stuff. And I mean, I don't know exactly like what the theoretical limit to that might be, but
So, like definitely one limit is the speed of light. So there's an information bound on Bitcoin where you can only transmit information so quickly. So I mean, Dan, to your point that Bitcoin is the money of the solar system, correct. That is the extent at which it can go without us being able to figure out how to beat the speed of light issue. If you look at all forms of money have come with some sort of technological advancement in communication, whether it's handwritten language and the first money, whether it's the printing press and the double entry accounting, whether it's the computer and the triple entry accounting. But it has to be able to be communicated. And so that's just one bound that makes Bitcoin not possible to be apex money for the universe.
Right. Which is what
there
I
are-
said.
That was Dan's point about like different planets having different monies, but like we're
Or
concerned
different solar systems.
Earth right now.
Well, sure. No, I mean, I think Bitcoin is perfect. Like the other phenomenon I think is interesting. And so I've been spending like way more time on hyper Bitcoinization and what does the world look like when we're in a Bitcoin only universe, which is not that far away. I mean, it's in our lifetime, I believe. And so it's like, okay, well, when there is no price of Bitcoin anymore.
That's a crazy world, by the way, David. It's a very creepy world.
It is a crazy world. That's what I'm saying. But like, you can't really think about how creepy it is unless you can like actually put yourself in that mental game, because I mean, it's just tough to put yourself in that mindset, but thank you. That's beautiful. You have a beautiful face. You don't need that. You don't need that. So,
all right, guys, I got about 5 more minutes, then I gotta go cook some dinner.
all right. We won't keep you hungry, Dan. You need to take in that sunlight calorie.
I gotta have those Bitcoin maximal steaks, man. Gotta cook some steaks.
That's right. Well, but just how like when there is no price of Bitcoin, society begins to organize itself around the production of energy, because energy is how you get Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is the essence of the economy. And so things that get prioritized are technology that allows energy harvesting to be more effective, transportation and logistics to get to additional energy sources. Like the world reorganizes around that in a way where human lives or people's lives on an individual level are affected, because the market dictates that because of people desiring Bitcoin, the things that are desired from society are engineers, are, all the component requisites that are needed for energy production and Bitcoin mining effectively. And so it's an organizing principle that it has a profound effect on where society goes from here.
I mean, look, like if you model out like what Bitcoin looks like in hyper Bitcoinization in terms of like the annualized block reward value, I mean, you're not looking at a value larger than like 300 billion to a trillion or two. The world economy is massively larger than that. So no, the world economy does not re-architect itself around Bitcoin mining. Now, Bitcoin mining will become a big industry, certainly, but
it wouldn't be measurable in money. What it would reflect is if there's, let's say, 1% in fees for miners, then 1% of universal GDP is basically being redistributed every year to people who produce Bitcoin.
Not 1%. It's like way less than that. In the future, like I've modeled this out in my Bitcoin Security is Fine article, like it's going to be a lot less than 1% of the 1% of Bitcoin's market. It would be, I mean, maybe 1%, but even at 1%, it's still a tiny value, right? Like, so anyways,
it's a huge sum. It's 1% of all things.
Hyper-Bitcoinization re-architects human incentives globally across every single, socioeconomic background, every single government. That is the important part. Now, governments, since they don't control money anymore, that means that everyone's life savings, which is like their combined energy and time that they've spent to earn it, is preserved. That wealth is preserved. And also means that the entrepreneurial outcomes of different businesses aren't perverted by governments printing off $50 billion and handing it to an airline that are buddies with like the local politicians. So that's how Bitcoin changes everything. It doesn't just change like energy consumption. It changes every single industry, makes each one measured with a much more precise stick that cannot be moved, cannot be altered. And that means a much more efficient economy. It means that we allocate capital more effectively. We don't allocate it to defense contractors as much. We don't allocate it to these very wasteful things. We allocate it super efficiently, which makes...
We allocate it to the acquisition of money, the acquisition of value.
Well, you apply it to companies that are most profitable.
Correct. Yeah, the profitability is a measurement of efficient allocation of capital. But according, like if you look at like the block reward over time, like at the block reward as a percentage of the block subsidy, it's decreasing to a very, very small amount. And so you're saying that like energy consumption will be this, like it will be a big industry. I'm not saying it's going to be small or anything. It just, as a percentage of the global economy, will be very, very small. Which makes sense too. I mean, I'm not sure if you want
Dan, to your point, like the Bitcoin hash rate and the amount of energy that Bitcoin consumes is a function of Bitcoin subsidies or of energy subsidies.
Well, yeah, eventually too, like people forget that a lot of miners in the future might operate at like, so for example, like if I'm a country and I'm locked out of the global financial system because I've made enemies of certain big nation states, well, you can't stop me from tapping into my energy. So there are, I think Bitcoin mining in the future may not even be profitable. It'll be something that actually is done at a negative rate.
And Dan has arrived at my 2015 concept of negative.
I continually find people long ago who came to the same conclusions I do now. It's just taken me a lot longer.
I agree, Dan, though. That's absolutely true.
For example, like imagine like there's Bitcoin miners on every single piece of like energy creation, like so like windmills. You've got nuclear energy. You've got like Bitcoin miners everywhere, right? Well, then Bitcoin's OPEX at that point becomes zero. Like the OPEX, like basically like
because there's not this. That's not the entire universe of energy that can be consumed, and so now it just moves to the cheapest energy, which is off planet, and now people are seeking marginal energy in space, and so it's a constant process.
The energy.
Well, the point is the beauty of Bitcoin is that it adjusts to whatever energy is available.
Right.
It doesn't really matter.
But whatever's available changes over time.
The point is that like marginal revenue equals marginal cost in Bitcoin mining. It is the most efficient form of. It is perfectly competitive. I can't think of a more perfectly competitive.
And that's where
it's 100%.
It's kind of hard to even determine long-term costs for Bitcoin mining, because as it becomes like a nation state activity and they just utilize like essentially free energy or energy that would have been otherwise wasted, then the OPEX goes to zero. And by the way,
there's a point where the security of Bitcoin is worth money for a country or a bank or anybody else to pay for. And they will mine it negative zero.
If we dive into it too, like these ASICs, if you look at the efficiency or like the nanometer size of these ASICs over time, the rate of improvement is slowing, which is great. So essentially these ASICs will be built for long-term energy consumption. And so these ASICs will be built for very long lifetimes. They will have basically zero OPEX, and well, maybe it's minimal.
I think the reason why they're slowing is not because they're reaching the bound of what's possible. I think it's because they're reaching the bound of what our current economic system is capable of doing. And like,
that's not true though, David. They have a theoretical limit. They can be exactly one light year, like one light,
one nanometer
across. Yeah. That's
as much as smaller than that.
There's a theoretical limit to the size of these ASICs. So like even as they approach that, they're going to asymptotically reach zero again.
But I thought that like the difference between like nanometer of 2 and a nanometer of 1 is like a order of magnitude difference.
It is an order of magnitude difference, but it's also an order of magnitude cost to get there.
Exactly. Yeah. So what happens is that the value of Bitcoin grows.
Like David, We're already at like 7 nanometers. So like we're getting progressively closer to that limit. Like, and that's a
7
physics limit.
nanometers would be 7 orders of magnitude difference. So that's
But
pretty
nobody
big.
will get to 7. They will not get there. They will not get there linearly, and they will get there asymptotically. You can literally calculate how they will get there.
Well, I
They
guess
will
what I'm
get
saying is
asymptotically.
that there are infrastructural bounds and production bounds to our
The
ability.
graph, David, will look like this.
Yeah.
All right.
And
Well,
also-
you know, naysayers, I'm not going to try to convince y'all. All right, F you guys.
I mean, look, it's just a known construct in like the, you know, in all tech, right? We just know that like everyone wants to build better processors and better. And so
If
this is a thing that's like
finding it a perfectly free market thing, then I would agree with you, but it's not. So we have a lot of inefficiencies baked into our system that Bitcoin will expose as Bitcoin and energy.
No matter what.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very basic premise. The machine just takes energy and then spits out, you know, guesses, right? Like it's not, these aren't like, there is some innovation to be had in terms of making them smaller and more efficient, but they are, if you go to my proof of work is efficient article, you can look at the, I think it was like hashes per watt hour or some sort of efficiency metric. Like, you know, they're just becoming asymptotic, exactly like Junseth said. Like,
Well, then you just switch the cost basis switches to something else. So then it's like your marginal cost of producing energy becomes the definitive element of what your marginal cost is.
David, we have some questions. We have some questions from the people in the chat. Question to the panel: how much hash rate should there be? The answer is the hash rate always will equal whatever hash rate equals MR equals MC. Marginal cost equals marginal revenue. That will always be the hash rate. And so what happens is if the hash rate, if the chips are half the size, MR equals MC will be twice as much hash rate. Pretty simple.
all right, gentlemen, I'm getting yelled at by the girlfriend, so
All right.
we got one more.
Dan, I love you.
We can have one
Go
more
ahead.
final. We can have one more final word if you guys want. Love you too,
Yeah.
Junseth.
This is your final word right now, Dan. Take it away.
Yeah, I think that like when we look at Bitcoin, I'm incredibly bullish on the long-term prospects of Bitcoin mining. I think it's like a very simple business that has a ton of operational complexities that I'll never know of because I've never operated a Bitcoin miner. But if we look at the long-term Bitcoin miners, like essentially Bitcoin just ingest all the extra energy across the whole world. Like, and then Bitcoin security isn't just like the cost, because the cost approaches this gigantic number because you can't actually conceptualize the cost. Like, and here's what I mean. Essentially, Bitcoin is bidding like almost close to zero on this electricity because you can't make any other use of this electricity due to transmission issues. If you try to transmit energy from Iceland down to Texas, 0% of it's going to make it there. So these are transmission issues. So Bitcoin is centered around these very these areas where there are energy inefficiencies, which as Bitcoin ingest all of this excess electricity and its hash rate continues to climb, there is no other bidder for that electricity. So like the security of the network becomes massive because it becomes larger than even a cost you can conceptualize, because like Bitcoin is bidding, like imagine like it's a bit of zero almost. And that bit of zero is a bit of zero for all electricity. Like if you calculate how much electricity is wasted or how much energy is wasted, it's some phenomenal percentage, like 30% or 40% of all energy is wasted. So essentially to attack Bitcoin at that stage, you'd have to competitively bid for any of the other electricity, which will essentially be exponentially more expensive than the bid of almost zero. All right, well, I'll leave everyone with that. I got to go, guys. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it, David.
My final statement, I want to give a shout out to Max, who is in Ukraine. He's an artist. He's a Bitcoin artist. And he's made for me some of the best Bitcoin art I've ever seen in my life.
Very cool.
Looks great.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And Junseth, I want to say it's been great to hear you. For those of you that don't know Junseth already, he is one of the original bad boys of Bitcoin. It's always fun to have him on. And here's to wishing for a sweet, sweet reunion of the two bad boys, Junseth and Krista Rose.
Not happening, but David, we never got to the Bitcoin bull, which is the first time I ever saw David when we snuck into the Bitcoin bull, and David was making bets with what's it, Bitcoin
Mo Levin.
Yeah, who won that, by the way?
He did. I bet on NC State. No, I bet on UCF. They got beat. Yeah, that was probably 5 Bitcoins.
That was
now.
days after BitPay had been hacked.
Yeah,
I don't know if you know this, David, but Chris was subject to the same hack.
I do, because Chris's computer was attacked from my computer, and my computer was attacked. A computer that attacked BitPay's computer. So
correct. So
I was
like
the common source.
that's exactly correct. So like we David was the source of the BitPay hack, and we were attacked. We had a number of assets that we held in common. So like I remember that night we had a Bitcoin meetup the night of the BitPay hack. And we were down in Miami, and Chris wasn't able to make it that day because he was cleaning up the hack. It was exactly the same thing that happened to BitPay. It was an interesting little hack where they like literally wrote from David's account and appealed to people's sort of like desires to write for Bitcoin Magazine. I don't know, in BitPay's case it was different. In BitPay's case it was different, but like they appealed to like David's contacts and basically tried to get them to like give up their passwords. It was a really interesting hack.
No, and they like lived in my inbox for a long enough time to learn kind of like how I talk, to learn who I was talking with, to understand what to go after. So in Chris's example, Bitcoin Magazine was the attack vector. For BitPay's example, we had an asset purchase agreement from a deal that we had done, and they were expecting a contract. And so for every person they went after, they customized the message to be something that they were expecting, and very brutally effective. They also went after Adam Draper and Eric. They might have actually tried to go after you, and you didn't fall for it. I don't remember. They went after
I've had several people send me stuff or whatever. I usually just ignore all that stuff, so I don't even know exactly.
Eric has anyway, so.
Chris fell for it.
Oh, too bad.
What an idiot. So Junseth, thank you for reminding me of that horrible chapter in my life.
But David, I think that most people don't know your connection to the BitPay hack.
Well, zero connection to the BitPay hack. Just to clarify and to dispel any conspiracy theories that live on Bitcoin Talk, zero connection to the hack, other than I was also a victim of the hack. So
you were a victim of the hack, but like the point is that like I think the BitPay hack was viewed as like an event that occurred to a Bitcoiner, but it wasn't. It was leveled at numerous Bitcoiners in that day, and I don't even know that like modern Bitcoiners know what the BitPay hack is, but those that were around do, and it was in fact something that like lots of Bitcoiners are subjected to via David's email.
I will say there was a small, like a limited list of people that they hit. Every person on that list is like a badass today. Honestly, like that's like one of the best Bitcoin OG lists of people that they try to go after. So I'm actually very proud that my email was used to go after such a English list of crypto luminaries. So, all right, Eric, so we're wrapping this up. You're too much of a gentleman, and you let the most obnoxious of us, primarily myself, talk too much. And so we're going to have you back on another show so that your brilliant mind and history in this space can shine, and you can share some stuff, because you're too nice to interject as much as you should interject.
I mean, I just don't have much more to add. I mean, I think you guys are having. I mean, I actually, I'm learning a lot. I didn't even know about all these details about these hacks and stuff. So.
Well, but give us the closing remarks of the night, the most profound, most interesting thing anyone's heard all year. Drop it on us right now.
Now you're setting me up, man. Now you're setting expectations too high. I'm disappointed now. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't really have anything like too remarkable to say beyond stuff that I've already, said in other places. But for me, Bitcoin initially, as I said, was more of like, I got into it because of the tech, but eventually I grew more towards like the monetary and economic side. And now I've actually started to really become interested in like the political angle. And it's really, fascinating times that we're living in right now, seeing what's going on in the U.S. I think that we're basically seeing kind of like the collapse of an empire. And I don't know what all the implications for the world is from this. I think Bitcoin is, it could play a huge role, kind of like as a catalyst in, it kind of provides an exit from the system for people that want to exit it and, be able to kind of function independently of it. And a lot of ideas are going to develop out of the people that kind of, free themselves from the current fiat system. I don't know about the long-term implications of Bitcoin. I think it's really hard to predict very, very long-term. I don't really want to, speculate too much on like the whole, intergalactic kind of stuff that, or solar system wide monetary systems or stuff like that. But I do think that it's very, very important in terms of educating people about what money is, because I think for several generations, pretty much people just didn't even ask the question anymore. I think that, back in the 1800s or before, it was much more, people kind of had to deal with that issue a lot more. I think that ever since, the Bretton Woods Agreement, and even before that, I think people just kind of forgot what money is completely. And people are relearning that. And Bitcoin is an important part of that process. And I think that education for society is probably the biggest legacy that Bitcoin is going to have, whether it remains as the global monetary standard or not. I can't really say, or whether something's going to replace it eventually, but it's definitely playing a huge role in that. And right now I'm just kind of, looking and watching in awe, like, as we watch, the biggest, basically the biggest global empire that's ever existed kind of collapsing right before our eyes. What's going to happen with all this? And I don't know, if it weren't for Bitcoin, I think my hope for the future would be much bleaker, because I don't really see, another way to kind of exit from this whole thing. And I realize that in order to survive in this fiat system, and you basically have to play the game the way it is, and it's a very rigged game, and I don't want to play that game. I want to play a different game. And so Bitcoin kind of gives me the option to play a different game, and I think that that's really the thing that most excites me about it.
Dude, that is absolute poetry, and I could not agree more. I mean, it would be so hard to live in today's environment if it wasn't for the comfort and knowledge that there's a way out, that there's hope. I mean, Bitcoin is hope. And so, well said. Well said.
David, why don't you take us away? I'm going to jump behind the camera to the top.
So, I think, Eric, that's perfect note to end on. The only things I'll mention as closing remarks is one, if you liked what you heard tonight, if you are interested in this concept of hyper Bitcoinization, of freeing the world, of giving people hope and an option out, you should come to Bitcoin 2021, where we are going to be creating the countercultural, I don't know, what's the right word for it? Concert, party, festival, the tip of the spear of the cultural revolution that Bitcoin is bringing to the world. And so be a part of it and fill the power vacuum and fill the information vacuum with sound money. And then second thing, closing remark, don't stand for this BitMEX shit. All right, like, stand with BitMEX, stand with Arthur, stand with Ben, support entrepreneurs building great things. Don't support totalitarian, draconian financial repression of the people.
No, for sure. I mean, I don't think that any of us are supporting that. I think that we're just being realistic about what can be expected. And it's really tough when you take those kinds of risks, especially in this kind of environment, that some people are not going to get hit. And, we're going to take
and they made a lot of money doing that, by the way. Like, I have no problem with them making money, but like, it was a highly risky venture. That's my problem.
I hear what you guys are saying. Like, you're right. You are being realistic. Luckily, this is Bitcoin, and the laws of what's realistic don't apply here. All right.
Hey,
so
David, can I sign us out?
Yes. So, Junseth, I'd have no other way. Go.
All right, everybody. This is Junseth chucking up the deuce of the South. The match has ended. Go in peace. St. Catherine, pray for us.
All right.
you.